Hey, coaches. Today I wanted to take a look at how do you keep growing? How do you keep pushing yourself to grow as a coach beyond an initial coach training? This entire program is meant to be a fully accredited, full program for your coach training to help you have your firm foundation and the coaching skills you need and various coaching tools you'll be able to use in your coaching so that the people you serve, the clients you're serving, get a great deal of value out of the experience. However, when a coach begins to go easy on themselves, there's going to be a regression in their skills, and they'll go back towards advice giving or mentoring or whatever skill around coaching, similar to coaching, feels most comfortable because coaching is a lot of hard work. Therefore, these are some of my tips, my suggestions for stepping up your game beyond coach training and continuing to stretch yourself towards your long-term goals. Now, this doesn't mean that you have to be pursuing the PCC or MCC or whatever other designation in the field. I think growth for growth's sake is more important. I think pursuing the MCC is great, but you do need to grow. A tree that isn't growing is dying, and a coach that isn't growing in their skills is going to begin suffering some loss in the effectiveness of their coaching sessions. And they'll have to rely more on their reputation, on the advice giving, providing of the value, and people have to rely on them more directly. And that creates that dependency that we talk about in other videos, other content. We want to help people grow and transform and be more effective for themselves. And that takes growth on the coach's side. So let's take a look at a few ideas. First off, you can do more self-assessing. I like to make this clear as I can throughout my entire training. You can take any of the assessing forms that are part of the training and use them, edit them, change them. I don't care. Grow. That's all I care about. I've had plenty of people say, are you going to, patent or something, my assessment? And I don't care for that personally. It's something that I love. I love assessing. Everyone, if you've gotten to this point, you know that I love assessing. And what's most important is that coaches are able to grow in their ability to assess their own skills as a coach, their own performance as a coach. And the best way you do that is by taking a look at each exchange, each time you speak up in a coaching session and doing a bit of assessment. You can do a real basic assessment, going to the forms that we use for the mentor coaching, for instance, and go to the coach tab, which is the third tab, and just say, did I do, the elements of START, or in the assessment, it might be STAR. Was my question in this line open or closed? And just say yes or no. So it might not like the fact that you're putting yeses and nos and X's and check marks, but you can just do that. You can note the question types if it was an identity-based question, a question around the situation, a question around awareness, and how much of the action and planning and closing did you do. So you can do just a check mark approach. You can even download it as a PDF, print it out, and fill those out by hand, whatever works. You could also do the qualitative approach and copy my approach where I do a qualitative assessment with each line for each element that ties over to the automatic scoring on the front page so you can get a sense of how it might be scored. And I think that's a great thing to do. But the challenge is it is your own assessing in a bit of a vacuum. And so that leads to the second suggestion, and that is to begin working with other coaches. And with this first suggestion along those lines, we can look at some sort of peer coaching, especially with a coach that is self-critical and critical of others. I think there's value in being a bit critical. And I know if you've been in the training, if you've been in the training, I do appreciate that critical eye on coaching behavior in session, not being critical of the coach themselves by any means, demeaning them or saying that they're failures. Or none of that's being present in our program. But instead, being able to say, this was a missed opportunity. And to be able to work with a coach that has the attitude, there's value in seeing missed opportunities for what they are, knowing that you did what you could in that moment, but there's that moment in the session where you're struggling. And offering to peer coach, reciprocal coaching with that individual. It could be a fellow student from this class. You could connect with another coach that you know in the field who's getting ready for their own ICF assessment. It can be valuable to reach out to them and just do some coaching together. So maybe debrief afterwards for 5 minutes each and get a sense of where both of you are going, where you both stand in your skills. Have that other eye. The value of this is you also get some of those reciprocal coaching hours that are compensated as long as both of you are coaching one another. Now, the third piece of advice is to do a similar thing, but with mentor coaching. So instead of official mentor coaching, to do some mentor coaching or at least assessing for one another. Make it reciprocal so that as you assess your own, you do the coach tab, and then you hand that assessment to the other person. They fill out the facilitator or the trainer tab, and you do the same. Each person is assessing their own and assessing the other coach's assessment or recording, and you look at your scores together. You unpack why you gave the scores you did and why you scored yourself the way you did, and get the perspective of the other person as well. You get the idea. You're just sharing the experience of assessing, and this builds muscles out of session that you can better leverage in session because your mind is really being stretched in that way of, these are the options I have because I've experienced this type of moment. I've unpacked this kind of moment, and I've thought about it. I've played the tape because of that self-assessing. Now, finally, you can take a look at getting a PCC or MCC level mentor coach. Now, mentor coaching is a part of this entire ACTP. You will have received 10 hours if you go through the entire ACTP. 10 hours of mentor coaching is part of the program, which is a great boost to your credentials. As part of the ACTP, it's required that you pass at the PCC level and get feedback at that PCC level. And that's what we do. Also, we dip our toes in the MCC approach as well. And you can, of course, continue to be mentor coached by me or someone else similar to me, but I do encourage you to look for other styles as well. Those who are not as boring in terms of their extra focused approach on the non-emotional side of things. I can leverage a more emotion-focused approach to coaching, but you know me by now that I'm a bit low-key and quiet and slower paced, and some might call boring, perhaps. I've not been told that to my face, but it isn't as dynamic as some coaches I know, whether they're in training or they're out in the field. Some coaches just have that natural gift of shine that really shows up in the way they present themselves, the way they demonstrate empathy in such a natural way. And while I'd always suggest that you look for a coach that does use some sort of data-driven approach that doesn't just share their opinion, I also encourage you to find other mentor coaches who can give you a bit of a perspective from the point of view of the more empathetic or the higher energy approach to coaching that others might have. Mix and match, get some perspective. I would recommend doing this maybe on a quarterly basis by, twice a year maybe, so that as you continue to grow, you're building up these hours of mentor coaching and mainly building up more experience, getting feedback from highly qualified coaches. All of these ideas are just here for you to consider as you stretch yourself beyond where you are today and beyond where you will be by the end of this coach training. Your growth should never really end because it's important work. You're serving people as a coach. And as that role, as you fill that role, you're filling a very high calling. So take it seriously, take your long-term growth seriously, and begin to dabble in some of these ideas, especially as you begin to look at that end date for this program. So thank you for growing, pushing yourself, and thank you for coaching.